Yes.
Cool. All right. So the question that I wanted to ask is, by the way, hello and all of that stuff. I'm seeing Kirk in a few weeks. I'm stoked about that, and love to you and all your family and all of that stuff. But we'll catch up properly later. But the question I wanted to ask is, um, how you came up with the concept of the film, but also I think the name Cameraperson, where we have traditionally been in a space where the kind of role was defined by a gender because it's cameraman is like the term. So just, yeah, just a little bit about what the project means to you, where it came from, and what the significance of the title is.
Well, hi everybody. You know, it's easy to come up with an idea when you have when so let's just start to say one, I didn't come up with the idea for the movie, but I did come up with the idea for the title because of experience. And basically, I'm a tall person. I'm about 6'1", 2-ish, and probably once or twice or 3 times or 4 times a day when I was filming, someone would call me a cameraman. And they would just be looking at me and talking to me and call me a cameraman. And then sometimes people would call me lady cameraman. and and then I met some people who would call themselves camera women. And it's just interesting because I would say when I was trying to come up with the idea for the title, I knew I wanted to have camera in the title, but I suddenly thought of the word camera person, which I'd never really used before. And I thought, oof, that's just like a terrible title. And the word is totally ungainly and doesn't work. But it finally became the only title that made sense. And I remember I was just completely unsure about it. And then like a year after the film came out, I was at the Camera Image Awards, which are like, it's just like 5,000 men in Poland celebrating cinematography. It's so many men. And then they were on the stage giving awards, and my film was one of many films, and it was being announced later, but some people had seen it, and people kept trying to give award for the best cameraman. And then all these men were on stage just stumbling, being, oh, I mean, camera person. And so it was so satisfying to like watch language changing in real time.
Yeah.
And some men got on stage and very defiantly said, this is for the cameraman. And it was just deep because it was like, oh, there are stakes to this. So that was that. But oppositely, I will say I did not have the idea for this movie. This movie was a process that happened little by little by little. And I always say this movie taught me how to make it, basically.
Right. So the movie kind of made you in a way.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna get one of the groups. They've all got a representative to ask their question, but
Oh,
it was nominated for an Oscar, and I just want to get a sense of how weird that is as a space and a kind of, because obviously, presumably, you gain traction because you're in other festivals and you're getting awards, and then people start chattering. But you're not in the Hollywood system, right? Your film is very clear that the kind of topics you're interested in are around social justice and around, the kind of films that you've made. And just to note that, Kirsten worked a lot with Laura Poitras, who made Citizenfour. And I think, were you in the room when or you did later bits, but you're friends with Laura, right?
yes, and yes, so that film did win an Oscar, and I was there for that, and I did get to go to the Vanity Fair party and dance with Beyonce. But Cameraperson was actually, I love this, Pierce, that you think it was nominated for an Oscar. It was not actually
No,
nominated for an
was it
Oscar.
not?
It made the Oscar shortlist, and I was deeply sad it was not nominated. But what was great, and I tell this to people whenever their films make the short list and don't get nominated. I said, don't worry, because everyone thinks you will.
Well,
So
I've definitely fallen for that. Yeah, sure.
But you know, there is a documentary branch to the Academy, and what's kind of amazing over the last couple of years is that the documentary branch has been a place where the sort of interest that documentarians have in the world has meant that we have diversified our members. So there are more women in our branch, there are more international members, there are more people of color in our branch than any of the other branches in the Academy. So last year, No Other Land, the documentary about the Palestinians in the West Bank who are trying to keep their land, that won, which was like a total, we were all so surprised because the documentary branch has a certain set of values, but then it expanded out into the entire Academy, because what happens is the documentary branch votes for the short list, and then the entire Academy votes for the ones that get nominated. But Pierce, I would say what was kind of fantastic about Cameraperson for me, that was not the moment of recognition. It was that people wrote about Cameraperson. That there were writers who, you know, just as soon as the film came out at Sundance, there were a lot of writers who wrote in very thoughtful ways about the film, and that's how it entered the kind of public space and dialogue.
Cool. Right, let's get an audience question. So first group, we'll just go at random. Right, you lot at the back, 1A. Right. So come and sit on the stool here. Introduce yourself and ask Kirsten.
I'm so glad I get to see you.
I don't think we could. I've got 63 of them. I'm not sure I can get all of them in.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Lee.
Hi.
Yeah, we were just wondering, how did you find these stories and like these people? How did you find people who were willing to work with you, even though it's very personal, very vulnerable? Yeah, what was the process like finding people?
Well, so you know, I was working as a cinematographer. So, you know, the process and all of this is that there's the director and the producer are working together with translators to create a story. And I'm hired to come on the job. And kind of like Pierce, you find yourself in a situation where you might have like a day or two, they've gotten the contacts, but suddenly you're there and you're the person who has to make the connection with the person, the emotional connection. And so that's a very peculiar, intense work, right? It's just like, you're just immediately like, what is that shark's tooth necklace? Like, and why do you have it, right? Like, or is it a shark's tooth that you're wearing, right? What your work is to look at the person and ask them something. So yeah, where'd you get that necklace?
It's from my local chemist. It's very interesting, sorry.
So it has deep personal value to you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I've already learned you have a sense of humor, right? And then boom, that's like within, 15 seconds of talking to each other, we know we can laugh together. So you are establishing some kind of a relationship. But with the film, then all of this footage is footage that I shot for other people on behalf of their films. And so the challenge for me of like, then how did I re-find all these people? Because I had worked on many, many, many films, and you might think like, wait, how did I ever remember or that happened? Because I filmed so much, but obviously people stay in your mind, right? Even someone you meet once, like that guy in Uganda who does that crazy dancing with his face, right? It's like, I met that person, I saw that person do that, and I was like, I will never forget you, right? And I never have. That person stays in my mind. So the process of going back to footage and trying to figure out what footage talks to me in a certain kind of way, that was a long process of excavation, I would say.
Cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
you.
Right, let's get
It's
another
nice to meet
group
you.
up from the right-hand side.
Enjoy your necklace. It's working.
What one of you up for the question? So I'm not very good on their names yet. It's first session.
This is a chance for everyone to reintroduce themselves to you.
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Seb. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Sam. Nice to meet you.
Our question was, what was the most impactful moment for you in the film? It's quite a hard question, I guess. There's a lot, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously the baby's kind of at the heart of the movie, but I think that experience of filming people trying to save a baby's life was so intense. And I think what's impactful is having a real feeling of not being able to do anything, of having impotency, you know, like wishing something would turn out okay, and just being there and doing everything you can, but everything you can is not enough, right? And so I would say that, like, and we all are in that struggle, right? None of us are stupid. Like, we know, like, the world's not fair. Stuff is hard on people. But in our one-on-one relationships with people, you're sort of like, I'm in this relationship. I can do something in this relationship, right? And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. And I think what's impactful is how do you struggle with the can't over time? So, like, what does it mean to create an image of someone at the very moment that you're not helping them, right? And maybe the hope is like, oh, maybe that film might do something for maternal health in the future, but I didn't do anything for that baby in the moment. But also, life's more complicated than that, right? Like, the thing I did do was be with the family as that was happening, and I tried to be with the father of the baby in a way that was loving and respectful. But you could argue, like, how can he feel that if it's also opportunistic what I'm doing, right? I am also filming. I'm doing something for myself and for other people. And so just the challenge of wrestling with that, I think, is also what's impactful, is like, is this worth doing? Does this make sense to do? Is this morally, is it a moral question? Is there right or wrong? All of those things are the questions that continue for me, I would say.
yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
so this group here, green t-shirt, that group, yeah. Thanks, Kirsten.
Mhm.
Okay.
I just went and saw, oh, look at you, loving the look.
Thank you, thank you.
I just saw. What were you going to say? I just saw Mother Vera. Have you seen that?
Not yet.
Oh my God, you're gonna love that film as a cinematographer. Anyway, what were you going to say? You just seen for the students?
Well, I just went last night to see Lindsay Addario is a war photographer, and they've just made a new film about her called Love and War, and it's just like kind of devastating. But I was thinking, like, she's lucky to have a film that is going to help her, like, make sense of her life for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So not dissimilar to this one. This keeps me re-asking questions about what made impact on me. Hello, Kangol.
It's
Hello.
lovely to meet you. My group and I were really interested in
What's your name?
Oscar.
Oscar.
We're interested in the intimate nature of the film, but we were wondering if there were any specific moments that felt a bit too personal or too raw to include, and if so, how did you blur the line?
Yeah.
Excellent
Yeah.
question.
That, you know, surprisingly, there was, you know, we all think about like, oh, we imagine that the scariest situation to be in is war. But one of the things that I had filmed was a family where the mother had cancer and she had a 5-year-old. And that was that was hard enough. But she invited me to film in their home at dinner time. And so I'd filmed with the little girl and the mom. And then dinner time came. And as dinner went on, I realized that the father was completely alcoholic and abusive. I had never met him before, but it was like over the course of the meal. And it was like a nightmare to be there. And I sort of didn't know even what does this director want of me, right? Like, does she want me to create a record of how terrible this is for the child, or how terrible this is for her, that she's going to die and leave this kid with this man? It was horrible. And I remember I walked out of there and I was like, that was worse than a war zone. It was like the inside of like this nice house in Brooklyn. And I tried to include that footage, and it was just like, ooh, it was like, and it felt wrong in terms of the kid too, right? Like, you know, that mom can decide to make that movie and put that kid in the movie, but I'm not going to put that kid in the movie, especially since the mom had died by the time I was making my film, right? So to like ask your question, like literally it becomes like extremely, it's extremely personal. Now, a question to ask, I think, is it because that situation seems like it's really, it's like, it's too specific. And then how is that different from any of these other situations in the movie, right? And does it have to do with that it's too close to, you know, my world? I don't know. I think those are all questions, but there is a feeling of like there are lines that like you're like, I'm not crossing that one. But I feel like the baby is on the other side of that line. Like that's a line completely crossed, right? So yes, I struggle with it. But isn't that amazing? Like that like just a family's home would seem scarier than a war zone, but it did.
Thank you.
Well, thank
Excellent.
you very much.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. This group here, do you want to bring your question? Remember to say your name and introduce yourself.
He's just like, please, for my benefit.
Yeah. I'm making notes.
Hi, my name's Molly. It's nice to meet you.
Molly.
Sort of touched on it a little bit with one of the previous questions, but my group was sort of talking about how like personal and raw and intimate some of the bits of your film felt, and we were wondering, as a camera person, as a cinematographer, is there something about a subject or a person that you're talking to that really like captures your attention and you think like, I'm really going to be able to build a relationship with this person, or like the camera is going to be able to build a relationship with this subject? Like, what sort of goes through your mind when you're working on?
It's so interesting because it is true that some people, the camera reveals them in a way that's different than if you saw them with the human eye, right? And I don't know, like we all know this if you've seen an actor where you're like, wait a minute, like in real life, they're a little bit funny looking, but somehow the camera, like we say, like the camera loves them or the camera eats them, right? So that's always kind of fascinating when you'll see a person, you'd be like, wait, why because of looking through the camera does this person transform, right? But what I actually sort of feel very deeply is like you just haven't searched enough if you don't think someone is interesting. Like someone someone is always interesting, but it's a matter of like, what are you looking at? How are you looking, right? And so when I look at you looking at me, like, you're really locked in. You're really listening to me. Yeah. But look, when you laugh and your mouth stays closed, right? Like, because you got those braces, right? So you got to close your mouth, right? And just, it's like, but that's, I see you doing that work. You're doing the work of listening to me and the work of keeping your mouth closed. And now you're like, oh, what do I do? Do I smile? Do I not smile? Right? And I've drawn attention to that thing, which is the thing you don't want attention to be drawn to, right? So there's like all this stuff that's going on when you're engaging with a person. And either a person sort of like goes with you or they like shut down more. And so it's like this back and forth of what signals is a person giving you that allows you in or is shutting you out. And sometimes when someone's really shutting you out, there's something really important going on. That doesn't mean you can get at it. And I think you all know this from your own lives, right? It's like sometimes people like have really surprising responses to things that make no sense to you. And that's a clue that like you really don't understand what they've experienced. And that becomes like this sort of intriguing thing of like, is there a way to know more? Is there a reason to know more? But yeah, I love to read, you know, like try to read what's going on. And you're like, ooh, you're like, I'm not going to smile. KJ, I'm not going to smile.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, okay, so going to the middle and the back.
And by the way, there was just an article in New York Times about how glamorous braces are. There's like pictures of people like just being like, I look fabulous. So own it.
Just before we get to the next question, I think the point you make about connecting with people is really important, because as a cinematographer, as a camera operator, the first thing that you have to do is make a connection with the person. It's not set the camera up, do the lighting, like do the technical stuff. You have to connect on a human level. So quite often, like my mum wanted me to get an autograph when I filmed with John Travolta, right? My dad wanted me to get an autograph when I filmed with David Attenborough, and never the twain shall meet. Like, my dad's not interested in John Travolta, my mum's less interested in David Attenborough, right? But people say, oh, who's the most interesting person that you've ever filmed with? And for me, it was a 15-year-old girl in a town called Gravesend on the East Coast, which is kind of a bit desolate, run down. And she was 15, and she had an 18-month-old baby, and she was pregnant for the second time. And it was for like a horrific, like Channel 4 thing, like Britain's youngest mums, you know, like some terrible. I did some right shit in my time, I can tell you. But you take what you can in order to pay the bills, right? But the thing is that as a camera person, I was going to spend a week with her, right? I can't turn up with judgment, what her life is, how she got to where she is, or who she is, or make assumptions about anything to do with her. I have to connect with her because I'm going to spend a week with her and I need her to trust me. So, you know, all of the things that we talk about in terms of the choices you make, I talk about collaboration, communication, and choices, right, as the three central elements of cinematography. But the other one is connection, right? You've got to connect with your subject. And whether you're doing drama or whether you're doing documentary, if you don't connect with the story, the choices that you'll make that come out of the collaboration and the communication that you have, they'll be meaningless. So that's just wanted to throw that one in there.
And I mean, the thing that's so funny though, Pierce, is like you have to do that, but you're also like the elements of cinema are also like time, money, right? The energy of the team that you're with, and one of the crazy things that I did early in my career was that I was filming with a woman whose mother had died when she was a little baby. And so she'd never met her mother. And we were going to meet this was in Brazil, and we were going to meet the maid who had found the mother dead with the little baby who is now my grown-up friend. And so we were going to film at her house, and we had knocked on the door and she wasn't there. So we were standing in her yard when she started to come up the hill. And so, of course, I turned on the camera and she was like, Claudia, Claudia. And she came and she hugged my friend. And I was so appalled because my friend was just stiff as a board and wouldn't hug the woman back. And what did I do, Pierce? I stopped filming the camera and I went and hugged the woman, which you can understand why I had the impulse to do that, but that was completely like, but what the issue was, I couldn't handle the intensity of the situation. That here's this woman crying and hugging this woman who's stiff as a board and won't hug her back. And that's what told the emotional story, and yet I couldn't bear it. I had to turn off the camera and go hug the lady. So sometimes you have to make your connection with the people you're filming after you filmed them, right?
True.
Hello.
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Summer, and me and my group were just wondering, because obviously you featured Bosnia a lot in your film, and I think it was the most featured country, and we were just wondering what spoke to you so much about the footage you filmed there, and why was that country specifically so special to you in your film?
Thanks for noticing that. So, I've always heard that phrase, like some people would die for their land, right? Like you think about like Gaza right now or the Ukraine, and it's sort of like, why do people care so much about their land? Like, why don't you just, like, part of it is just like, why don't you just move, right? Like that's, if you could, like, why? So I'd always sort of had that, like, I don't understand why people would like stay and like risk their lives for land. And then in Bosnia, we went to visit that family up on top of that hillside. And I was like, oh my goodness. I think maybe because, my mom had grown up on a sheep ranch and I had never really, it didn't still exist by the time that I came into my mom's life. And so I had never really experienced it. So I think it was probably the combination of being like, this is what my mom's childhood was like. But these people were just like living on this land in this incredibly connected way. And it was a summer day and it was beautiful and sunny. And I was like drinking the blueberry juice and I was like, I love it here. And then they told me that, they had gotten all of the honey for the season and that someone had come in the middle of the night and broken their, dozens and dozens of jars of honey. And this is long after the war, but it's basically, they were like surrounded by Serbian people who didn't want them to still be living there. So their lives were at risk to live there and they were constantly being harassed. But suddenly I understood them. I was like, oh yeah, I wouldn't go either. I would stay. And that was just really wild to actually get that on a visceral level. So I think, and it was interesting because I couldn't even really communicate with those people. Like I couldn't speak the language at all, but I was like, oh, I love this place. So that was the connection. And then obviously it was to go back and show people footage and then see them having aged. And then I went back again with Cameraperson, the film. And what was such a heartbreaker was that the old lady who I said, like, did you always have such a great sense of fashion? She was like, yes. She had died right before the Sarajevo Film Festival, right before we were going to show and I was like, no, I can't take it. I was like, the world is too unfair. And so then the family came to watch the film and I was sitting behind her son and he was just like sitting with his head in his hands like this for the whole, sections of Bosnia. And I was sort of like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And then afterwards he said, it was like my mother was alive. He said, we don't have any photos of her. So I was seeing her on the screen and she had come back to life. And so we went and we did screen grabs, and took, they took those images of her back home. But ever since then, I'm always like, wear lots and lots of patterns, sort of in homage to her, because that thing she said of like, cut up my clothes and wear them in a new way. So I feel very connected to Bosnia still, I would say.
Great.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Which group? Hands up if your group has not asked a question. Right, that one, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Love that you're all so organized with your groups.
I'm quite organised. This group here.
Nice job, Pierce.
Yeah, I've got them to sign the register.
Wow, you're on fire. Hello.
Hi, I'm G.
Hi, G.
It's lovely to meet you. My group and I, we wanted to ask, and I think you touched on it already, about making long-lasting relationships, or if any of the stories really stood out to you in a way where you felt like you had to maybe interfere, even though I guess for most documentarians, it's sort of like a rule that you shouldn't interfere in the events of what you're filming. But did you ever feel such a significant pull or the need to make a deeper relationship with some of the subjects that you've filmed?
Yeah. You always feel that need, and the shot with the little kids and the axe, right? Like for me, that was like the most concrete example to show you like how we struggle of like, it's okay.
I have to fast forward that bit. I can't watch it. It's too stressful.
It's so stressful.
If that was Blake, he'd have put it for his leg for sure.
Yeah, because it's so stressful, because you're just like, you're watching him like tug at the axe, and then you're like, no, it's okay, the axe is firmly in. But one does not know how to judge what's going on with other people. Like gauge, like, is the axe gonna come out or not? So those kind of moments happen all the time. But it's interesting. One of the relationships that has gotten really deep for me is the relationship I have with the soldier, the Marine who is standing in front of the White House with Michael Moore. And for most of the footage, we had the chance to ask the people, can we use this footage in the movie? Because obviously they'd first been asked to give their release when they first made the film. And for some people, it's like 20 years before or 15 years before. But there are some people who we didn't ask permission a second time because it was impossible to find them again, or we were concerned that because of their politics, they wouldn't want to be like, that the Christian family wouldn't want to be in the same movie with a woman who was having an abortion. So there were like these sort of politics involved in it that we made choices. And I hadn't asked permission of Abdul Henderson. I just asked permission of Michael Moore, who'd already gotten his release. And then I hadn't shown him the film yet, but then someone found him in Washington, D.C. So he came to the screening of the film, and he came up with me to do the Q&A. And on stage, he asked me, like, why did you choose this piece of footage of me? Like, why did this make the cut, basically? And I was like, it's just so strange, because I just would remember you sort of biting your lip. It would just like come to me at certain moments in my life, like in the same way that the midwife with the baby would come to me and she'd be kind of blurry, but I would see her. And then I would see Abdul biting his lip. And he said, do you know what happened when I bit my lip? And I was like, no, I have no idea what happened. Like, I noticed it when I was filming, and it stayed in my mind for, these 12 years. And he said, well, so just for context, like, if you're a soldier in uniform and you say you're not going to redeploy, you can, face super serious consequences for that. You can basically be put in prison for that. And he said, I wasn't planning to say that. I wasn't going to say anything like that. And then he said, I was starting to talk, and suddenly I had the image of Muhammad Ali in my mind. And I stopped and I bit my lip while I listened, like I watched Muhammad Ali in my mind say, if you're not going to take this chance to speak out, like when? And that's when he decided that he was going to do this really courageous thing. And I just think that's like so incredible how like something super dramatic was happening inside of him internally. And because of the camera work, like, and the sort of way that you intensely look at people, you don't know what's going on inside of them, but you know something's going on inside of them. And I think it's quite profound, like even now in this moment, and with all kinds of political choices to be made, I still think like his biting his lip comes to my mind. And it's kind of deep, because it's almost like, if you think about like what biting your lip is, it's like, am I gonna say something? Am I not gonna say something? I'm gonna let the words out. And it's also kind of harming yourself, right? It's like biting your lip. So it's this really profound little clue is what it is. But yeah, so I know his kids, and I call him every couple of months, and we have a really lovely relationship. But there's a bunch of people I wish I could keep relationships with, but I don't get to fly to Nigeria every day of the week. Thank
Right,
you.
groups that haven't asked the question yet, please. Hi, put your hands right up. Okay, this group here. What is it? 1B? Yeah. Okay. How many groups we got left? Put your hand right up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got about 15 minutes to ask 6 questions.
Oh my God.
Quick fire round.
I better get quick.
Hi, I'm Maddie. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, Maddie.
So our question from our group was, which of your shoots gave you the most insight into like people's personal lives?
It's interesting, this thing, like everyone wants the like what was the most, and I think I would turn it the opposite way. For me, it's like what things gave me insight into my own self. And I've been very obsessed with racism my entire life, and really focused on like, as a white person, how am I a part of that? I'm always thinking about that. But it took me a really long time to think of myself as female. And I think that's because in some ways the normative thing is that, like, oh, men are the people who are respected for their minds, and we've had to do a lot of work for women to be thought of in that way. So there's some weird way in which I was like not fully considering myself female. I was sort of male adjacent. And it was in putting this footage together and looking at it that I realized, oh, look at me sort of looking at women, the life of women in all of these different ways, and how, you know, whether or not you have access to reproductive health, like your life can go in a totally different direction. And obviously I had become a mother by the time I made this film. And so I think I was changed by having children. I was like, oh, it dawned on me really late that I was ready to have children. I had children when I was 41. So it's just kind of interesting, because it's more like filming with people gave me insight into myself that I didn't really have. And in some ways, like, I know I'm supposed to be going fast, Pierce, but I'm not.
To be honest, if we don't get to some questions, what I'll do is I'll get the groups that don't ask them to email them to me, and I'll share them with you.
Perfect. But just to say, like, we're each always in our own bodies, but it's so complicated to be in a body, and it's changing all the time. And it's like we're trying to make sense of the world. So often we're looking out from our own body, looking at other people's bodies. But I would say like this film brought me fully into my own body making this film. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that group there. Sorry, I hate to rush. Your
It's
answer
you
was so
know, I'll
amazing.
take my sweet time, Pierce. I'll take my sweet time. Hello.
Hello, my name's Lee.
Hi, Lee.
Hi. This isn't related to your film, but I was wondering if you feel like there is a space and an appreciation specifically for being a woman in cinematography, or if you feel like you have to conform to men and their standards and their socialization to work as a cinematographer.
Well, you know, in some ways, like one does, there's like all kinds of practices and rules and hierarchies that are part of the cinematography world. You have to understand gear, but little by little, I sort of realized like that many people, men, women, people, trans people, like they approach how they do it in their own way. And so the choice of like whether you conform or not is actually, it's always a choice. And that choice may cost you, right? But what I try to think about is like, how do I do things in line with my own values? And one of the things that I would say happens throughout all of cinema, but particularly in cinematography, is that people pretend to know things. And the fact is like the movie that you are making in the moment has never been made before. The way of doing it is like every director like actually has no idea what they're doing, even though they've prepared for it. And and like there's a way to use a camera and not mess it up, but still you don't really know how that camera works, and you don't really know what that shot's going to look like until you're there in the moment doing it. So one of the things I learned pretty early on was that people were, and particularly certain male cinematographers, were pretending to know and sort of hiding in their like gear techie knowledge. And the way they talked to the directors or they talked to the people they were filming was like completely patronizing and like arrogant and just like nonsense, right? And I realized like if I could sort of support people and like not give them the feeling of like, ooh, she has no idea what she's doing, but that I was open and that the way that they were thinking about it might work, that actually established really amazing relationships with people. What's interesting right now, and I will say, is like I've been trying for the last 4 years to make a film about Susan Sontag with Kristen Stewart, and I'm always talking in terms of like not knowing. It freaks people out in the fiction film world, and it freaks out financiers. And I was just with this woman named Chris Hedges, who's married to D.A. Pennebaker, who's like one of the original OG documentary filmmakers. And she was like, "Oh, KJ, you got to fake it more." So it's just interesting, like certain situations call for you to bluff. But I think because like if people don't have confidence in you, if they've never seen anyone like you doing what you're doing, you have to at least give them the impression that you can do it, even if inside you're like, I have no idea how to do this. But I think it's like, instead of conforming and contorting, how do you find a way to live with your own values, right? And so my values are around like, I want to make this movie about Sontag with Kristen Stewart, but which things will I do or not do in the quest to get that movie made? Will I pretend to not to know things in order to get it made? All of those are questions. But yeah, I would say like yeah, like as opposed to contorting and conforming, like how can you like wiggle around a little bit in it? Yeah.
Thank you.
Can
You're
all the
welcome.
and all the groups who haven't asked a question send one person up here? I'm going to suggest, because you're so
Flash round.
amazing, is that we can overrun this session. If you have to leave, that's great, but your name will be noted and put in my book. But if you want to stay, I would love to give all the groups a chance to ask the question in this format. Okay, so if all of you who have not asked the question, send one person up, yeah, to ask their questions now. Everyone, the groups that haven't asked the question, send a person up to the front, please. 4. Okay, so we've got 4 questions. So are you happy?
Why doesn't each person ask their question?
Well, no, because if you're happy
Yeah.
to stay.
I got to get kids out of bed.
All right,
Each
okay,
person
all
has
right.
to
Go, go, go.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Anna. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Our group wants to know what made you choose putting your own personal life and like your family into the film, and how that makes sense for the film overall.
Great. Okay, I'm not going to answer. I'm going to let the next person come, and I'm going to remember. Nice to meet you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Rafi, and I was just
Hi,
wondering,
Rafi.
with your film, was there any like decision making in terms of like the sequences that you put together? Like, was there any thoughts behind why certain clips were together?
No
Like
thoughts behind any of this. Zero thoughts.
Right. Love it.
Hi, I'm Imogen. We were wondering why you decided to make the film when you did in your career. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm James.
Hi, James.
Does the honesty and truth in this film stem from the vulnerability of the camera, as you shot the subjects but never actually intervened with their actions?
That's interesting that the camera is the vulnerable part. Thank you, everyone, for that lightning round of questions.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Oh, one more. Okay.
Hello,
Hey.
sorry. Hi, I'm Laura.
Hi.
Through like reviewing old footage, what were like the noticeable differences from older footage to like newer footage, and how does that change how you see yourself as a filmmaker?
Tell me a little bit more about that question. What
As
do you
in,
mean?
like, obviously you're going through older footage. Like, did you notice changes in maybe like technique or like how you were capturing certain like things to like from older footage to newer footage?
Okay, got it.
Adios.
Thank you. Oh, ciao, ciao, ciao. So yes, I mean, to the person who was asking about the editing, you know, we put a ton of thought into this. And once we'd come up with the idea that there would be no voiceover and that the footage had to speak for itself, then there were certain constraints that started to emerge. What shocked, I mean, to your last question, Laura, like, I was like shocked. I thought I was like doing things really differently for each different filmmaker. And in fact, I was like, wow, it's kind of always me. This footage is very similar. Like the older footage, the newer footage, like this way that I search to look for things. And so that was kind of fascinating to discover like how much of myself was in all the footage. But, you know, to the questions around like, why did you choose to include your family and why this moment in your life? I basically hit some kind of a limit as a human. I had traveled to 86 different countries. I'd filmed in 5 post-genocides. I'd filmed in wars. I'd filmed people who'd suffered terribly from all kinds of different violences. And my mother had Alzheimer's. And so I was like going to all these different places and then coming back and seeing my mother. So I was thinking a lot about memory. And I have no idea whether it was because my mom had the Alzheimer's and I was identifying with her or wanting to be close to her, or it was also because of I had seen and heard so much, but I was starting to forget things. Like I would literally get to the airport, have no idea where I was going, or I would have been like, I was like in Darfur one day and then flying to Liberia, and it would be like 100 and this is temperature, so it will make no sense to you, but it was really hot. It was 130 degrees in Darfur. And then we went to Liberia and it was like 96 degrees, which is really hot. And I was so cold. I was like chattering. My teeth were, because it was like a huge temperature change, even though it was like boiling hot in Liberia, I was freezing. And it was like this thing of being unable, I couldn't remember where I was. Like, I was like, what is going on that I'm freezing cold in Liberia? Like, I don't understand it. So like these really basic level, like, what country was I in yesterday? I was incapable of remembering because I was so intense in the present. I was just like, because often it was a matter of survival or it was just the job, like, let me be in the present. And I just really had a sense of like, I have to try to understand what's happening to me. And so, like I said before, it's like a process of excavation. It was like literally, I would like be like, what happened? What actually happened with that footage? And I would go back and look at it, and then it would help me remember. And little by little, this process of this film, which took several years, it kind of restored my own capacity to be in the present and the past and like remember again. Of like my memory totally reemerged, which is kind of incredible. So I would say the other thing the film is really about is like permission, right? Do you have permission from other people to film them, to share parts of their lives? And the realization that permission is really complicated. Is it isn't just like, oh, I can ask you to do an interview and you said yes, and then you signed it, and then you end up, weeping in the interview about something terrible that happened to you. Like, did you want to do that? Do we still have permission? Do we have permission over time? So including my mother who had Alzheimer's and my kids was this way of signaling like, both of these people don't have the capacity to give their permission. And yet I am using them in the film. And yet you also must imagine that I love them, which is, and I hopefully have their best interests at heart, right? And that same complexity, in many ways, I'm saying is there for all of the people in the film, right? Like, do I have their permission? Is it okay that I filmed them? Is it okay that this image of them exists forever? And, I think this is the subject matter of all of your lives right now, because when I made this film, it wasn't, I made this film in 2016 and, the iPhone really came into being around 2007. You've had your entire lives with the presence of cameras. There's probably tons of moments in your childhood that have been filmed or photographed by your families. You are constantly making choices. Do I film or do I not film? And in many ways, like, everyone's like, right, no problem, because everything's being filmed. It doesn't matter. But I think we're all starting to run into the complexity of what does it mean to be in a body and have these thousands of images connected to the body, right? Like, and then separated from the body. So I'm really thinking about this all the time in terms of like what it's doing to our politics, what it's doing to our human relationships, what it's doing to our sense of self, right? And this movie was sort of the beginning of me trying to have perspective on what it meant to film all the time. But I think you are all in this class thinking about, how do I have perspective on my relationships to images, my own images, image making, because I think it's affecting the world in ways that nobody expected, basically. So you know, this film is full of my questions, but I feel like I have even more questions now. And I imagine that you all do too. And I think the one thing I would say from all of this is like, nothing is ever just one thing. Nothing is, it's not, and it's not, oh, this is right and this is wrong. Like, it's much more complicated than that, what we're doing as humans. And there's tons of things that we have no way to know or to understand, even about a person who's like the closest person to us, like our parent. There's so much we don't understand about them. And maybe we learn a little bit more through filming, and yet it's still so much mystery, even in the moment that you're actually filming. But I just think cinema is an amazing tool for trying to figure out how to be human because it's kind of like our consciousness or like our dreams or our memories, but then we have the evidence of it, right? Like our dreams we can't look at, our consciousness we can't look at, but we can look at film evidence, and it's sort of like a hallucination. It seems like it's alive, like you're back in that present moment. So I think cinema is also about time in these really interesting ways that are meaningful to people. And Pierce will show you, I have another movie called Dick Johnson is Dead, which is a comedy, differently from this movie, but that's all about sort of time and death and dying and messing around with it. But this film, for the people who asked me, like, this film, making this film helped me, I would say. Like, it helped me with grappling with all of the difficulty in the world. And I just want to like say to all of us, we all are in this moment in time where we get to see more people's pain than has ever been visible to humans, right? It used to be you lived in your little village and you knew a couple people who were in pain, but now we know about the pain of the whole world. And I think we have to be careful for our own mental health, right? How we engage with that, because those feelings of like, I can't do anything about it, like that can become an overwhelming thing that just renders you completely passive. And there's just no reason to be passive in this life. Like, we need to be in relationship with other people. And sometimes the image world like gives us the feeling like it doesn't matter who we are and what we do. And of course it does. It matters to us, right? So
I'm conscious you probably have to go, but I just wanted to tell one very quick story. My daughter was studying in New York, and I said, oh, you must go and see Kirsten. And then she messaged me, she's like, oh, I hung out with Kirsten today. I was like, okay, what did you do? She went, we walked the rabbit. And I was like, that's literally the most Kirsten thing ever. So that you've got like I was like, she's in New York and you're walking the rabbit. Of course, yeah, that makes sense. But I just wanted to say a massive thank you from everyone here. And also, from my point of view, what amazing questions. Honestly, what a brilliant set of questions. So a little round of applause from me and Kirsten to you. You don't need to applaud
truly fantastic questions.
So thank you so much. I'm going to let Kirsten go, and I will catch up with you soon. I'll see your brother in a few weeks, and send my love to everyone.
I sure will. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Over and out. Have a look at Blackboard. Make sure you do the research. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. Could somebody who found the chairs that weren't in here take them back for me, please? And I'll see you for the seminars. Yeah.